meeting of, this is the Emeryville Planning Commission meeting of Thursday, January 22nd. Can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Cardoza?
Here.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Here.
Commissioner Gunkel?
Here.
Commissioner Keller?
Here.
Vice Chair Coomerly?
Here.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Coomerly. You've been promoted. Vice Chair Tan has an excused absence this evening. Chair Moss?
Here.
So we have a quorum of 6 commissioners.
All right, with that, we'll move on to public comment. So this is a time for anyone who would wish to, anyone who wishes to speak on an item that is not on the agenda tonight. If you wish to speak on something that is not on the agenda, please come forward.
Give me the timer.
Hello. I would like to talk about, briefly, family-friendly housing in Emeryville. It's a topic that's much talked about, much ballyhooed over the last 10 years. The way that the city is set up right now is that there is a distinction made and at the planning department between affordable housing and family-friendly housing. Those two are mutually exclusive, according to the city of Emeryville. But let me pause for a moment before I get into that and ask, why do we seek families in Emeryville? Why do we want family-friendly housing? Well, I think there's 2 reasons. The primary reason is to support our schools, because the city has, if for no other reason, has a $22 million relationship with the school district. Also, there's other considerations such as supporting children in our midst. But never mind that, we have a $22 million relationship with the school district, and they are our partners. So we need to support the schools, and that's the primary reason why we seek family-friendly housing. And the another reason is for diversity of housing, diversity in population. We have a lot of, kind of sort of tech workers, young men in their 30s, perhaps. We want another demographic, and that could be children. So we like the idea of children. But the problem is the primary reason, which is to support our schools. So if we don't have a relationship between family-friendly housing and affordability, we subvert our primary function, our goal of why we want families here, and that is to support the schools. Because at market rate, the market rate as it currently is right now, people will move into Emeryville with families, presumably, in family-friendly housing at market rate, but they're not going to send their children to our schools because they don't. People with those sorts of financial resources don't send their children to public schools in general, and specifically, certainly not in Emeryville, with the schools being such that they are. So we're subverting our own goals for having family-friendly housing, for bringing families here, by not connecting affordability and with family-friendly housing. Those 2 should be inextricably connected, because we don't serve our primary function, which is to support the schools, if we don't do that. So food for thought. We need to pay attention to what we're doing here, and that's why we need to support family-friendly housing. It needs to be connected to affordability. Just an idea. Thank you.
I've got a comment on the general plan, but I don't know if I should wait till we have that on the agenda here, a progress report on the general plan.
That's the general plan annual progress report. So that is an item that looks at the progress of implementation of the general plan over the last year. So if it's related to that specifically, you can wait. If it's more general in nature, then
I think it's more general. I can just go ahead and give my comment. I just didn't want to go unheard. A lot of you are new faces to me. I'm with New Logic Research. My name's Rick Johnson. We're located on 67th Street over on the other end of Emeryville. We started our company here in 1989, on a little startup over here, just 4 or 5 of us. We've got 70 employees now, working out of our facility on 67th Street. With this general plan, and I was here quite a few meetings ago giving my sort of opinion on what's happening to us as one of the few manufacturers left in the city. Through the rezoning, we've been sort of structurally rezoned as a warehouse district, and our housing capability was taken away at the time, the big boom when Pulte was doing all the developments around us, and we're starting to feel a little squeezed with the residential that's going on around us, but at the same time we're being told by the city that we're not zoned to be able to sell our property for the highest and best use. Subsequently, what's been happening, we get a little bit of complaints about trucks backing up, and on 67th Street, if you ever try to drive that anytime during the day, we've got a new neighbor now that double parked trucks all up and down. Nobody's got loading docks. We happen to have a loading dock. We're fortunate that way. And so out of our 70 employees now, we've relocated 20 of them to Nevada, and we're now considering moving the rest of the company basically to Nevada. And again, with the highest and best use for the property as real estate owners as well, even though this general plan is underway, we feel that we're being sort of hand-tied. On the one hand, being squeezed out by the residential that's going on in that neighborhood, which is a real, when you go down on San Pablo there, things are looking really good. But we feel that not only are we being sort of forced out of the city, but on the other hand, we're not allowed to actualize the real value of the property that we invested in over 12 years ago, and we've been in Emeryville since the inception. I moved into Pacific Park Plaza in 1984. We started our company in 1989. And so I just wanted to be heard on this subject. I know the general plan is in motion and all that, and I've been told by some people on the commission, none of you look familiar, but that, well, bring us a deal and we'll think about it. And I just basically wanted to throw that question out, is like, we have to have a deal in order to sell our property for its highest and best use, or is this thing in motion, and do we just have to sort of live with it and take our lumps and move on to Nevada? And so I just wanted to put all that on record. So any of you that care to talk to me, again, Rick Johnson at New Logic Research, I'd be happy to talk to any of you on this subject. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on anything that is not on our agenda tonight? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the action recap. Does anyone have any? We did not. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes?
Accuse myself, I was absent.
I'd move that we approve them as submitted.
A second.
All in favor? Or,
Aye.
Okay.
any opposed? Or Vanessa
So we got
recuses?
5 ayes and 1 abstention.
Abstention.
And 1 absent. Okay.
Great, so the action recap is approved. All right, then we will move on to the director's report.
All right. What did I do with it? Here it is. Let me first tell you what the City Council has done since your last meeting. Your last meeting, of course, was on December 11th. They have met twice since then, on December 16th and January 20th. On December 16th, the Council held a study session on the draft economic development strategy and work plan for the next 2 fiscal years and provided staff direction on that. They also approved a request for proposals for a public art master plan, which will include provisions for district banners as well as city gateways. The council heard an informational report on unreinforced masonry and soft story buildings and requested staff to pursue an investigation of soft story buildings. That's more of a building division item. They approved the plans and specifications for the Bay Trail bicycle and pedestrian improvements on Christie Avenue between Shell Mound and Powell Streets, and authorized the city engineer to advertise for bids. And finally, they heard an update from the owner's representative on the status of construction of the Emeryville Center of Community Life project. On January 20th, this past Tuesday, the council held a study session on the Sherwin-Williams project, which was very well attended. There were a number of speakers, mostly from 1500 Park Avenue and the Artists Co-op. The major concerns that were expressed by the speakers and by the council included traffic, shadows, building massing, family-friendly housing, ownership housing, and density. The council also unanimously approved the Emeryville, Oakland, Berkeley transit study, finally, so kudos to Diana. That is now a done deal and all approved. The council unanimously approved a conditional use permit, major design review and setback variance application to demolish 2 existing residential units and replace them with 2 new units at 5532 Doyle Street. As you may recall, this project was approved by the commission at your last meeting on December 11th. And finally, this is not really related to the commission, but I thought you'd be interested to know that the council heard a report on minimum wage and directed staff to prepare an ordinance for a minimum wage tied to our living wage, which is a little over $14 an hour. This would be higher than the minimum wages in Berkeley, Oakland, and San Francisco, and it's to take effect by July 1st. So we have our marching orders to put that together. And finally, in other news, I just want to remind you all that the scoping meeting for the Sherwin-Williams Environmental Impact Report is next Tuesday, 5 days from today, next Tuesday evening, January 27th, here in the council chambers at 6:30 p.m. And again, this scoping session is about the EIR and what topics are to be covered by the EIR and what alternatives to the project are to be looked at in the EIR. It's not about the merits of the project itself. It's about the EIR. And while it is a public meeting and everyone is invited to attend, and it will be broadcast on ETV live and videotaped, it is not a planning commission meeting nor a city council meeting. The meeting will be facilitated by our EIR consultant. So that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
I have one question about the council's direction on the minimum wage ordinance. Was their direction that the full living wage would be effective in July, or that it would be phased in any way?
You mean the full minimum wage?
Yeah, but
I believe the direction was to have it take effect on July 1st without any phase-in period, right? I mean, we're still sort of fleshing out exactly what the direction was, but it was pretty clear that they want a minimum wage in place tied to our living wage by July 1st. So we have a lot of work to do between now and then. That means effective July 1st. Yeah. And that means it takes 2 readings of an ordinance, which doesn't take effect for 30 days. So basically that means the first reading of the ordinance has to be in April. So we're working on it.
Question for you. Do we have any update information on the pedestrian bridge, the Bay Center over Bay Street in Horton?
Do you want to answer that, Michael?
Yeah, so briefly, the monies that the redevelopment agency had pledged for the South Bayfront Bridge had been tied up in litigation against the Department of State, the State Department of Finance. And if you recall, we had, the city's position was that the agreements between the city and the successor agency, which allowed for the transfer of those funds, were proper transfers. The State Department of Finance had taken the position that those agreements were invalidated by the dissolution law. We litigated that issue, and the trial court agreed with us. The state then appealed that decision, and we received a decision last week. And the appellate court affirmed the trial court decisions found for the city, and agreed with the city's position that those agreements were valid and therefore the funds were properly transferred. However, that being said, the state still has the option of requesting further review before the state Supreme Court. I think that time for requesting a review is about 30 days or so. We do not know if they will or will not request further appellate review. And certainly the state Supreme Court has no obligation to take the application for further review. So stay tuned.
As a taxpayer to the state, I'd like to ask them to not waste our money and fight this any further.
We should know by your next meeting whether or not they have appealed it to or petitioned the Supreme Court.
Right, and the other thing I'll add too is that if the Supreme Court accepts the petition, there's a whole other briefing schedule that will take place, and it'll be at least a year or so before that review process has run its course.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Great, thanks. Then we will move on to the disclosure of conflicts of interest and ex parte communications. So this is a time for any commissioners to disclose any potential conflicts of interest on any of the items before us tonight, or any ex parte communications that you've had regarding those items.
So I'll be recusing myself on the first study session, item 8A, because of proximity of our residents to the property. And I don't think I've had any discussions with any of the developers since our last meeting.
I think as I disclosed at our last meeting, I did meet with the applicant for the marketplace, but not since our last meeting.
I met with them also, but it was some time ago.
Yeah, as did I. It was, I believe, in November or October. I think we all did.
Yeah, okay, all right. Great, thank you. Then we will move on to the rest of our agenda tonight. So the first item is the general plan annual progress report. Can we have the staff report, please?
Good evening, council members.
No, don't do that, Diana.
Oh.
No. Don't use that. Oh, no.
Well,
It's on our screens.
Yeah,
Oh, it is?
yeah, we can see what you're doing.
Well,
Projector's just dead.
Is the projector on?
It's in the upper
it was
left-hand
on
corner.
just a little while ago. The projector's on.
Ah.
No, the projector.
There you go.
All these fun images in there. It's going to be an issue. Because earlier today, did you turn this on? Well, it was on. Well, we'll need this for everything tonight. Is this going to be? Oh. Ah. Oh, come on. Yay! Okay. Good evening, commissioners. I get to present, Catherine Furpo and I get to present the General Plan Annual Report, which covers implementation of the General Plan and the housing element, and it has a new little section about the housing successor. Implementing the land use element, you folks have made 12 decisions last year, including the Hyatt Place Hotel, and held important study sessions on 6701 Show Mound, Christie Avenue Park Expansion, 3706 San Pablo, Sherwin-Williams, and Marketplace. Oops. And in terms of area plans, in Park Avenue, they got a park into the capital improvement program, a dog park under the 40th Street Bridge. And implementing the North Hollis plan, there's a greenway section under construction south of 59th Street. In terms of economic development, the city is, council just had a study session, I think, on the draft economic development strategy. And staff helped to put on a Berkeley Emeryville bioscience meetup. Implementing the transportation element, we now have a capital improvement program with a lot of bike ped improvements. The council approved a traffic calming concept for Horton that did not include barriers. The city's installed bicycle video detection at 4 intersections, and we adopted a traffic impact fee with vehicle trips as the way of deciding what people pay. We have participated in several countywide planning efforts. The Emeryville, Berkeley, Oakland Transit Study is done, and the city has tried out 2-hour parking zones and found that, yes, they do work in keeping turnover for the retail. And as these pictures show, the safe routes to transit on San Pablo Avenue south of 40th is under construction. Implementing the Parks, Open Place, Public Facilities and Services element. In the capital improvement program, there's a skate spot, the Temescal Park Adeline entrance, and reconstruction of Davenport Park. And the Temescal Creek Community Garden has opened. There are events in the park, movies, picnics, and shows for the kids. This is in Doyle Hollis Park. The fire department conducted 4 personal emergency preparation classes in different parts of town. The Emeryville Center of Life had its groundbreaking, and the city runs a play program at Anna Yates School. In terms of urban design, pedestrian and bicycle amenities, you required them in the East Bay Bridge Shopping Center and requested them in study sessions for the Shellman Residential Marketplace and Hyatt Place Hotel projects. In public art, the city has solicited designs for the Shellman Powell Bridge Public Art Project, and those submittals are in the link. And there's a public art master plan RFP that includes looking at gateways. And this is just from the art purchase from the exhibition. In the sustainability element, the city has installed 68 bike racks and gotten a grant for 12 lockers at Amtrak. We're testing fuel cell vehicles, and 2 of the city's projects will have green building ratings. ECCL will have a lead rating, and the 3706 that you'll be looking at in just a minute will be going for green point rating. And then, of course, there's off the grid at the public market on Saturday afternoons now. So general progress on the general plan, not including the housing element. We've made progress on 66 actions this year. 7 were completed before. 1 was started last year and will hopefully be done next year. 2 are later, so we're not dealing with them yet. 1 is ongoing but didn't apply to any projects this year. And the only 2 that we haven't started that are supposed to be short-term are the Crescent Marsh Path. And now I'd like to have Catherine Firpo come talk about the housing element.
Evening. This is a separate report that we do to HCD, but it's actually part of the general plan report. Goes into the general plan report as well as to HCD. This slide is our progress in meeting the RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And as you can see, we actually made a lot of progress. We're at 65% for the very low-income units, only 5% for our low-income units, 24% for moderate income units, and we exceeded the market rate unit requirement. Oops. Sorry.
Just press escape.
There we go. I actually prefer this. So as far as the housing element and the programs, we made progress on 41 of the programs. 11 programs had already completed before 2014. 3 were about redevelopment, 2 are ongoing but did not apply to any projects in 2014, and 2 required county programs that were not funded in 2014. The affordable housing set aside, we have 2 projects. We had 2 projects under construction in 2014, Park on Powell, with 8 very low income units and 13 moderate income units. They are renting up those units right now. Emmy on Christie has 29 very low income units, and they are marketing those units right now. They expect to be occupied in March. And Park on Powell is expected to be occupied sometime in February, at least the first phase, first building. The success, we have a new, the housing successor is working on 3 sites right now. This is the new report that we have to do, was started this year, about the housing successor and any housing assets that are that the city holds. We have 3 sites right now: 3706 San Pablo, which obviously you know where we're at on that, and we're seeing it next. 6150 Christie is in pre-development. You saw that at your last meeting. There was a talk about the what would go at those sites, and 3602 Adeline is those very small sites that are on the corner of Adeline and 36th. They are, we're in the process of doing the environmental assessment on them. 3900 Adeline, the building permit was issued. It's 80 units, 5 of which are very low and 7 are moderate. That's 80 units in Emeryville, by the way. It's actually a larger project, but we can only count the units that are in Emeryville in this report. And as you know, we've had a study session on 3706 San Pablo, and we're moving very fast on that project. And that's the end of the report. Do you have any questions?
Just one quick one, I don't know if you can answer. How do our percentages stack up with other area cities in our region?
Very well. Actually, ABAG just gave us an analysis of the other cities. I believe there's only 2 other cities or counties that have achieved more than we have, but it depends on what you're looking at, because some people have done better in the low, but worse in the very low. So it's, you know, it's hard to say, but we've done very well compared to other jurisdictions.
Is that cities in the Bay Area or?
Cities and counties, yes. The 9-county Bay Area.
Okay.
Do you have any explanation about the very low versus low, why the low is so, and what exactly is low? Remind me again.
So when we had redevelopment, redevelopment required that we do a production requirement for very low incomes and moderate income, but there was no production requirement for low. So the way the city's affordable housing set-aside ordinance worked was it was 6% of units were very low, and 9% of the rental units were very low, and 9% of the rental units were at moderate, and we didn't have a low-income production requirement. As you may recall, in our impact fees, we have changed that policy. So if a developer of rental housing chooses to do in lieu rather than pay the impact fee, then it's 6.9 units at low. So we're trying to find that balance in our inventory of affordable housing.
I have a question for Diana. I just was a little unclear how off the grid related to sustainability.
There's a policy about farmers markets, and we thought that was kind of close, and we could mention that we're doing something sort of like it.
People walk to it.
Diana, what's the timeline on the art for the Powell Street shell mound?
So the PAC, the art PAC, actually wanted to go back and have they have actually recommended one of the proposals, but they asked to go back and look at some colors of the lighting, and so I don't know when it's coming, but there has been a slight delay in taking it to taking the final approval to council, because the PAC wants to see some more information on the colors of the lights of the one that they chose.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, then we will open the public comment for this item. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the general plan annual progress report?
Okay, I'd like to talk for a moment about the general plan and density, housing density. Okay, it's pretty much the entire city, the power elite here in the city, that would be the 7 of you and others. Everybody agrees that density is an inherent good here in our city. Increasing the density. Why is that? Why is density an inherent good? Well, there's an historical context here, and if you look at that, this was the progenitor for this density as inherent good concept comes back to the idea of the late 80s, early 90s idea of smart growth. The idea is that we should do infill housing and infill development in our urban cores so as not to exacerbate suburban sprawl, which is considered inherently bad, suburban sprawl. So that's why density is considered a good thing. We've inherited that here, being an inner city city. So density is good. How much density? Well, that's an open question. If we could make 100-story towers everywhere in Emeryville, but most people would say that that's too dense and not good, even though increasing the density is an inherent good. So there is some amount that's too much. How much is too much? Well, we've never had that debate here in Emeryville. Instead, what we've done is we have deferred to the developers. We've let the developers tell us how much density is the correct amount of density. But that's a flaw. We shouldn't be letting the developers define for us what is good vis-a-vis density, because they have a different metric than we have. What drives them is profit motivation, and what drives us is livability. So there's a conflict here. So I put it to you that we should stop. We should have a debate about what's the proper amount of density that's good, and we should stop letting the developers tell us what the amount is good for us, because developers will steer us wrong in their chasing of profit maximizing. So I think we need to have this debate about density and what's the proper amount for us. And yes, it is an inherent good, but it has a finite amount, and we should have that debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment, and we'll bring this back for discussion. Anyone have anything to offer on the general plan annual progress report?
We have no resolution, I don't believe, or do we? Did we have? No, we don't have a resolution on this item. We would simply ask for a motion of the commission to recommend City Council approval of the annual report.
I so move.
I would second. I think that's a very good job, and I think the city's doing good.
Thank you.
Right, do we want a roll call vote?
Want me to call the roll?
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Cardoza?
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Aye.
Commissioner Gunkel?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Coomerly?
Aye.
Chair Moss?
Aye.
6 ayes, the motion is approved. We will pass your recommendation on to the City Council. Thank you.
All right, with that, we will move on to public hearings. So our one public hearing tonight is 3706 San Pablo Avenue, affordable housing. Can we have the staff report, please?
Go off again?
While we wait, I'll just ask this other Gibbons group. Good evening, Commissioners. Happy New Year to you. So we are first starting with 3706 San Pablo Avenue Affordable Project. As you know, this is on the southeast corner of what we are calling the Star intersection on the southern portion of the city. It's about a little over an acre site, and it is split between Oakland and Emeryville, where majority of the site is in Emeryville, and Oakland has ceded jurisdiction to Emeryville for both the planning entitlements as well as the building permits. In terms of a little background, this property was purchased by the redevelopment agency, and as part of its dissolution, it was transferred to the city to be developed in accordance with the redevelopment plan. And in last year, an ERN was approved by the council with the the current developer, with the following provisions: that it would be 87-unit rental housing for low and very low income households, an average unit size of a little over 1,000 square feet, an average of 2.29 bedrooms per unit, a set asiding of 11 units for special needs populations, and that the project should include amenities like community space, outdoor courtyard, and landscape spaces and commercial space fronting San Pablo Avenue. The commission reviewed this project at a study session in October. The project was generally well received by you, and you felt that it was of a high quality design, and the variety in programming of the open space and the unit mix was appreciated. The commission did not see a problem with making the findings for providing parking above the maximum allowed by the planning regulations. And the commission wanted to see the courtyard elevations as part of the packet, as well as street side elevation that showed the mass building. The commission also recommended participation in the AC Transit Easy Pass program and inclusion of a grease interceptor in the commercial space. So this is the project. This is the ground floor. You see about a little less than 7,000 square feet of a commercial retail space fronting San Pablo. So this is San Pablo here, 37th Street at the bottom, and West MacArthur at the top. There are 3 townhomes along MacArthur, and the lobby and the amenity areas is at this corner of San Pablo and MacArthur, and you have a parking garage at the back with some bike parking as well as a bike locker. It's a 2-level parking garage, and on the 3rd floor you have a courtyard space, and each floor has laundry as well as a community or a teen room or some community amenity on each level, as well as laundry hookups at each level. The 4th, 5th plans are similar, and you can see the laundry hookups here, and there's a storage facility. The 6th floor, in addition to the laundry and the storage areas, also has a little sky deck, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. In terms of unit mix, this is the unit mix and the size. This has remained unchanged from the previous study session. This kind of tells you the cross sections. You can see there are 2 levels of parking with 4 levels of units. The maximum height that this building reaches is 73 feet. These are some of the San Pablo elevations on the top and 37th elevation on the bottom. There's a mix of materials, stucco, fiber cement lap siding, fiber cement panels, and brick veneer. And the applicant will talk a little bit more about their idea, the design concept between the mix of colors and materials. These are the MacArthur Boulevard elevation at the top, and this is the rear elevation of the building facing east. This landscape plan, no trees are being removed as part of this project. 2 additional trees on San Pablo will be installed. There are about 2 new ones on MacArthur, and there'll be 6 new ones on 37th Street. If you recall, there's this little space here, which at the study session, there was an issue as to the use of the space. A dog run was at that time proposed, but the adjacent neighbor had an issue with the dog run, so what is being proposed right now is a bocce ball court, and what we also have here is a vegetable garden. This is the amenity plan on the ground floor. Other than the reception and the lobby areas, you also have a club room, you have fitness center, you have a homework room, and also you have office space. This is the courtyard landscape plan. This combination of a central courtyard. There's an overlook facing San Pablo, got a Zen garden concept, and there's also a community room at this level. This is sort of the sky deck. It's installed with outdoor kitchen and dining area as well as lounge area. These are some of the photo sims that have been prepared for the project. These are the different viewpoints that you're going to see. This is the location, this is before. This is the mass building, this is on San Pablo. And this is after. This is before, West MacArthur looking west. And that's the after. And you can see the mass, the new proposed mass building as well. It's not very clear, but it's there. This is before, and that's after. This is the lane splitter, and this is after, and you see the mass building here. And this is before, and that's after. This is on 37th Street, and this is after. In terms of the zoning district that this is in, the base zone is MURS, which is mixed use with residential south. There are 3 other overlay zones: neighborhood retail, transit hub, and pedestrian priority overlay. The use classification is a multi-unit residential, which is allowed by right. The commercial uses at this point, they have not identified specific tenants, but they hope to include some combination of retail, food establishment, and space for art galleries. The size of this site is over 1 acre, so the whole project would need a conditional use permit. The base density at this site is 85 units per acre, and they are below the base density, at 77.3. The floor area, the base is 2, and the bonus is 3. They are below the bonus, and they're within the base at 1.87. The base height is 55, and bonus height is 73, so they do, their height is 73, so they do need to provide bonus points of 90. So the applicant has identified the following categories in terms of how they're going to obtain 90 bonus points. One is energy efficiency. They have made the commitment to exceed the California Energy Code by 10%. They have also made the commitment to obtain LEED Gold or equivalent, which gives them 25 points. They have made the commitment to provide free transit passes, 1 per unit. And as this is a 100% affordable housing project, we believe that the project also qualifies under the flexible public benefit category for at least 20 points. In terms of these commitments have been incorporated as conditions of approval, so we will make sure at various stages where it is relevant, particularly the building permit stage, to make sure that these things are happening. Parking. So in terms of parking for this project, this is, as I'd mentioned, it is in the transit hub zone, which reduces the required parking by 50%. In addition, this is a 100% affordable unit, which reduces the estimated demand by another half. So when you calculate, the required residential is between 37 to 47 spaces, and the proposed is 108. This means that they do need a use permit for parking more than, providing more than the maximum. At this point, since the commercial tenants are not yet identified, we cannot calculate that, but the commercial space is just a little under 7,000 square feet. And by our planning regulations, anything that is local serving commercial uses of 5,000 square feet or less in the neighborhood retail overlay zone, it does not trigger any parking. So it's just an extra 1,000 square feet that would require parking. Bicycle parking required is 1 short-term and 87 long-term. They're exceeding the required minimums by providing 5 short-term and 96 long-term. In terms of, there are other parking-related standards in our planning regulations relating to stall dimensions, aisle widths, loading, and electrical vehicle charging stations. The project meets all these requirements, and these have been outlined in the staff report, so I'm not going to go into details at this point. In addition, there are the standards relating to open space, courtyard, trash, and recycling requirements. Again, how they comply are detailed in the staff report, and they do comply. Design guidelines, this is just a few of the guidelines that the project complies with. Other guidelines are outlined in the staff report. So there are certain findings that the commission needs to make today. One is the use permit findings for bonus height. And the finding is that the proposed project will provide public benefits. Oops. This is going to be an issue.
Go off again?
No, it's not on. Okay. Yeah, I should have printed out. Okay. So you guys can see the slides? So
Yeah.
what is the last slide there?
We're on
Findings.
findings, use permit findings for bonus height.
Okay.
Public benefit, totally 90% are provided through
Okay.
old lead certification or equivalent is where we are.
You can see it out here.
That's
And you can share with your neighbor. Oh,
Is that gonna
work?
It's short.
Gonna work very well.
It's getting there.
there you go.
Yay.
Get your binoculars out.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead.
That's good.
So in terms of the findings that you need to make for the use permit findings for bonus height is, like I mentioned, they need 90 bonus points, and the way they are proposing to do that is by committing to LEED Gold certification, exceeding the California Energy Code by 10%, providing free transit passes per unit, and also the fact that it's providing a flexible public benefit in terms of providing 100% of affordable units. The other use permit findings that are that need to be made is for parking. They're providing more parking than is allowed, than the maximum that is permitted. It's, I believe, from 47 is the maximum that they're allowed, and they're providing 108. So the finding that you need to make is that the applicant has convincingly demonstrated that additional parking is required to meet the anticipated parking demand of the proposed users. One of the reasons why the required parking is so low is because it qualifies for two reductions. One, the fact that it is in the transit hub, and the other, the fact that it's 100% affordable housing. This is also a family-friendly project, and family-friendly units typically require more parking than non-friendly. And the applicant, who is an affordable housing developer, in their other projects in the Bay Area have felt that this is the amount of parking that is usually typically needed for a project of this size. In addition, there is also some commercial space for which we have not accounted for the parking, so that would, the additional parking would add to that. The other finding that you need to make is that there is not an over-reliance on automobiles, and it will not adversely affect transit, bicycle, or pedestrian access to the site or adjacent users. As I mentioned before, they do provide free transit passes to all units, and this will promote the use of transit in the area. They also, as part of this project, will be making improvements along their frontages, including sidewalks, and that would improve pedestrian environment, and they also provide more bicycle parking than is required. Okay, So in addition to these findings, you also have your normal major conditional use findings. And these are general findings in terms of the compatibility of the project to the general plan, to design guidelines, to adjacent neighborhood, and the fact that the design is of high quality, and how the project meets these various findings are outlined in the resolution that was attached in the staff report. We have also conducted a traffic study for this project, which was attached to the staff report. The study identified no major impacts. They did have some recommendations regarding to site circulation, and these recommendations have been incorporated as conditions of approval in your packet. So that concludes my presentation. The applicant also has a presentation. I'm not sure how that will occur, unless we can, yeah, I can't think of anything.
Is it on the pen drive?
Oh, it's on there.
Well, just treat it as if that was
Okay.
the projector.
You want to try the switch again, because the light turned red up there, it was
Oh, it
yellow
did?
before.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
You see?
yeah.
Before we invite the applicant up, do we have any questions of staff?
I should give you this.
Does it reach that far? Keep an eye on it if it goes out. Oh, okay, well, then it reaches that far.
Maru,
Yes.
I do have a question. So I was a little confused. I think the staff report and the Fair and Pierce study referenced 115 parking spaces.
Yes, I think I forgot to mention that. That is an error. When the current parking count that is being proposed is 108 and not 115. Okay. They did some rearranging and reduced it to make the parking garage more workable.
Okay, thank you.
Colorful.
So just for the record, I'd like to make the changes to the staff report and the resolution and the conditions of approval, changing 115 to 108.
Thanks. Any other questions for staff? Nope. All right, great. We'll invite the applicant up.
Good evening, Chairman Moss and Planning Commissioners. I feel like I have a rush here to get through this before it turns off again. But I wanted to give you kind of a progress update that's not necessarily directly related to planning, but where we are with this project. We have secured some county home and CDBG money last year, and we've reapplied this year for the boomerang funds that are available. We've applied for the Oakland NOFA, the state's infill and infrastructure grant, and we are going to be applying for the Housing Authority of County of Alameda for 12 units of Section 8, project-based Section 8, as well as the Federal Home Loan Bank's AHP program in March. So it's been very busy, and staff has been working really well with us and moving this along as well, because we're in need of the DDA as well as the entitlements for some of these applications to make them happen this year. We've also spoken to a lot of the subcommittees as well as the neighbors, and we've taken a lot of the feedback from them, in addition to the study session with the Planning Commission. And I want to highlight just the 3 key changes since the last time we were up here. So the first one is around the parking. Our current parking count is 108, and we are very adamant about keeping that count as high as possible. In our conversations with the neighbors, they have expressed great concern about not overloading the parking in the immediate, the street parking in the immediate area, where current parking is already very tight. And we believe that we've designed, a very smart way to resolve that issue. We have the lower deck, which is shown here, that has a gate that's about 2/3 into the parking area. So behind that gate are 28 residential stalls. They're reserved for the residents of the property. Upstairs, in the second deck of parking, all of these 57 parking stalls are reserved for either staff or the residents. The tandem stalls there are reserved for staff. So there's slightly less than one-to-one parking. We're planning to unbundle the parking, so we're not gonna assign, and we're gonna rely on, I think, the special needs units, the studios and one bedrooms, where we have people with developmental disabilities and or people with suffering from AIDS, to some other households to not have vehicles. But I think our parking is at 83 or so within the residential area. Then downstairs, there are 23 stalls in the parking area that's open. That's the southeast corner of the parking area in front of you. 5 of those stalls are really reserved for particular uses. 3 of them are electric vehicle charging stations. So if no residents have electric vehicles, those stalls are going to be empty. And we're not going to encourage people to park in them unless they have an electric vehicle. So those kind of are set aside. There are 2 stalls that are for car share. So again, those are not going to be accessible to either the residents or the commercial use. And then in our feedback from the potential commercial tenants, they did say that parking is very important for them, for their businesses. So we want to make sure there is some parking for that. Now, during the nighttime, when the commercial space is essentially closed, those stalls then become open to the residents, and that's how we're going to address some of the overflow parking. So it's a kind of a dual-use area. We believe the 108 is absolutely necessary, and we hope that you approve the increased number of parking stalls. This is the second major change that you see on this ground floor plan is that the arcade along San Pablo Avenue is now no more. So after some feedback from various departments and as well as the police, that frontage has been pushed closer to the street, and it's enlarged the interior slightly for the commercial space and also for our leasing amenity space. And then we'll get to the perspectives where you can see how the street treatment is still very, very elegant and human scale. So that leads us to, and this is the kind of updated amenities area where Miru had already referred to the reception area, the clubhouse. Now the demonstration kitchen, the wall behind the demonstration kitchen connecting to the homework room, which is modular, can be opened. So you can create a larger space that spans the clubhouse with the homework room for larger events. The fitness center has enlarged a little bit, the office. Then there's the 2 restrooms and the maintenance office. Let's see. Okay. So the third change that you can see here, and we'll come back to that as well, is the outdoor retreat area next to the single-family residence. So now there's a very small piece of lawn that on the way to a bocce court that stretches pretty much the entire length of the strip. And then there's some passive landscaping along the fence to screen, and we believe this kind of more passive use is more appropriate for the neighborhood. So those are the 3 major changes, and then I'll sweep through this. You have this, well, not that fast. You have this in your packet. This is the courtyard level. We have relocated the teen room and the office, the service coordinator office, to the corridor, which leads to the exit from the courtyard. The laundry has also changed because there is now the space for the shaft down to the commercial space for fluve in case a restaurant moves in. Why is this changing on me? Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. So otherwise, things are pretty similar to the last time you saw them. So these are some perspectives. This is the perspective of the corner of San Pablo and 37th. You can see the 2 vehicular entrances and the ground treatment along the 37th Avenue, and then the street frontage with the new commercial space that's pushed out to the sidewalk. This is the perspective on the corner of MacArthur and San Pablo. You can see the slightly taller ground floor space. That's our 20-foot podium for the 2 parking decks. On 37th, on MacArthur. The exterior staircase is also new that you see here. That's an egress from the Zen Garden on top. This provides fire access directly to our podium deck without going through the interior of the building. It is gated, so that's not publicly accessible. This is the frontage on San Pablo. You see the overlook here, as well as the corridors that pass from one side to the other. We've also done some perspectives relative to the neighborhood. This is an aerial of, at the southwest corner, an aerial of the northeast corner, and no idea what that is. We've got our elevations. Okay, so these are the interior shots that were requested by the commission. This is the interior shot looking at the east side of the building, where you can see the corridors above, and you see the pass-through down here going into the Zen Garden. This is where the lounge would be. Those are units. This is an area. This is a perspective from the 5th story, looking down at the courtyard, and you can see on the other side the open corridors connecting the 2 structures, as well as the overlook.
While you're on this page, I have a question regarding this, and it might be kind of nitpicky or something, but the laundry room areas, are they not kind of where the picnic tables or the dining tables are there to the right?
Yes.
Okay, so if you go up to the top, that shows a balcony. Is that not still a laundry room, and is there not a balcony there? Shouldn't that be shown coming up equal to the other windows?
I believe there's enough space in the laundry to make a balcony out of it.
Okay, it didn't show on the floor plans of that laundry room that there would be a balcony there.
Probably, well, I will defer to the architects. But, let me go back.
Excuse me, you need to come up to the microphone, please.
So this is the top story
broadcast.
floor plan.
Right.
You're correct. The footprint doesn't show that balcony space right now, but that laundry room is big enough to incorporate a deck off of it.
Oh, cool. So that would have, that particular laundry room will have some outdoor space as well. Awesome.
May actually do that on all floors. But so you can see that this is the laundry room, and there are, I believe, 4 machines in there, and there's plenty of space for utilizing that kind of the end there. Uh-oh, that's it. All right, my time's up. So the courtyard perspective, and then there are the floor plans. No radical changes there. This is the landscape plan, and you can see in more detail, in color, the very small piece of lawn and the bocce court, the passive use. The landscape plan for the courtyard level, the sky deck, and then the imagery that we've used previously for some of the potential features representative. So I think that's all for our presentation, to keep it short. The architects and I are here to answer any questions you may have.
Could you go over in a little bit more detail? There was one, I guess it's not a slide anymore, one screen that showed the frontage that is no longer an arcade. And
on the perspective?
Keep going back a little bit. There we go. So is there any depth in the fenestration there? It looks sort of like there's an angled.
There is.
Another?
It's slightly deeper by probably 3 feet or so? 2 feet. And then at the base there's a slight angle there.
And that's concrete down there?
It looks like it.
I just had a couple questions, or kind of a statement for staff and then a question for you. So on your unbundled parking, the unbundled part will be just in the 23 spaces that are unsecured?
No, the unbundled parking is for the residential parking area.
Entire building. Okay, so this is where I have a recommendation or a problem or something to recommend to staff is, With the residents being concerned about parking on the street, I live in a building that has over 1,000 parking spaces for 525 units, and people park everywhere but in the garage because it's convenient to park on the street. It's closer to their unit. So to me, I don't have a problem with you having 108 spaces, but what I think is that as a city, we need to do some kind of management system to our parking or something, because those spaces are going to, the streets parking is going to be used before the third floor of the parking structure is, especially if it's not a deeded place, because everyone's going to grab the prime spaces and then they're going to go up to the floor, and then by the time they get up to the floor, they're going to say, forget it, I'm going to park on the street. So as a recommendation, I think the city needs to do something about parking management on the street, because no matter how many spaces you have in this garage, people are going to take the easy spots on the street before they take anything else.
I think there are a couple of factors in play here that may make this slightly different. Because we have a singular point of entry on the corner of San Pablo and MacArthur, parking on the street is not particularly convenient because you still have to go walk all the way around or walk through the garage in order to get to the entry. There's no doors fronting the sides. But parking in the garage is convenient because you have direct access to the 2 elevators that go up to the residential units. It's also protected, gated, and you're sheltered from rain, sun. I believe people will use the residential area.
Our garage is the same way, and there's one point of entry into it. And so I think, I don't want to make this a condition of approval, but I think as a city, we need to monitor this. And that if it becomes a problem, that because these people are parking on the street and taking places when they have plenty inside, we need to mitigate that problem somehow.
And we'll have a parking management plan when we get closer to actually getting the project financed. But we're happy to work with the city if you want to put any kind of permit parking. We've talked about this with the neighbors as well, that the neighbors would receive the passes for the permit parking, that our residents will not.
How about motorcycle parking?
There were, I believe, two or 4 stalls in some of the spaces in the garage that they're kind of not quite big enough for a car stall that we've designated for motorcycle.
So just 2 or 4?
2 or 4.
For the whole project?
Yes.
Have you found that to be sufficient in your other projects? That ratio?
We don't have a lot of motorcycles generally in our developments, but I think we can probably look for some more kind of corner pocket spaces.
Yeah, like 213, or that had a little extra by the utility room or something. Yeah, it just seems like as it goes, I feel like I see more motorcycles out there, just as a way to get around that's inexpensive and reasonable and doesn't take as much space.
Okay. There is a strip on the second deck on the north side of the parking where it lines up with the bottom, but there's an extra space because there's no corridor. That could be an area where people can park their motorcycles as well.
Could you talk a little bit about the ground and second floor parking at the rear of the building, the one that's just got a 10-foot setback from an existing residence? Because that residence on 37th Street, there's a lot of windows along that side, and I'm concerned about whether there's going to be car lights and, intrusion from the garage to that house.
The building itself is closed. There's ventilation and there's screens, and I think there's a perspective that shows that. But
Yeah.
I don't think car lights will go through the building. The screens are high enough that the car lights should not go through.
Right, from the perspective, it was hard to tell whether, how much visible light was going to be coming through, whether it's light from the garage, interior lighting itself, or light from the headlights. It seemed like that could be a problem for the people living next door.
Okay, I'm not finding the perspective on this one, but. Do we have a shot of this?
You go to the street.
Oh, right. Elevation. There we go.
Linden Street, sorry.
Yeah, this is the facade that would
Right.
face our neighbors.
It looked like it could be windows, or it could be a screen.
There's screens. Yeah, with metal on it. So we'll make sure that at the bumper height, we'll block that off.
And that there's some kind of screening that will diffuse the light inside the parking garage, too.
Yeah, the parking garage light should be directed inside, not spreading. But I'm also forgetting what the fence barrier would be along that edge.
I believe it's just a wood
Solid?
fence. Yeah, I think it's a solid wood
Okay,
fence now.
so that should help as well, if it's a solid fence.
2 stories to that building, I believe, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's that 10-foot green space between our garage and the next building.
Right.
And then there's a fence
Mhm.
on the in between the 2 properties.
I have a question about the corridors. So I noticed on the bridge between the 2 sides of the building looks open, but there weren't any, I didn't see on the floor plan any doorways between that and, or any doors shown between that and the hall, what sort of look like interior hallways. Are those interior space or not?
They would be considered unconditioned space, and they are open to the open air. And that was designed intentionally for fresh air and for reducing operating costs and not having to condition it.
Do you, in the courtyard renderings and elevations, and I guess even the facade on San Pablo, you can see the bridges, I guess, and the balconies that have appears to be a wood siding or a wood rail. Can you tell us what the material is for the rails, like there?
I believe that's siding, right? Just that's.
Yeah, so where you're actually seeing the open catwalk corridor, we would propose a wood rail.
A wood?
A wood rail where you're seeing
Okay.
kind of the wide board slats, and there, of course, would be probably a metal top rail, and then metal vertical pickets that support the horizontal wood members. But where you're actually seeing the horizontal slats, that is a wood rail.
Okay. And does the I just want to make sure I saw a photograph of this chessboard play area with chess pieces, and then the rendering is just a checkerboard pattern. Will this actually have chess pieces?
I'm sure it will have chess pieces. I don't know if we'll keep it out all the time, but they'll probably be in the office or the music room if it's not out.
Okay.
One more question. One thing I noticed on the, kind of the cover page rendering, is that there's some, and I realize this is a certain time of day and whatever, but there's some kind of color variation that's shown in the fiber panel, around on kind of the top level and around the side, and it gives a really kind of nice warmth to the building. And then looking at your material board, it looked like that was all one color fiber panel. Is that right?
So the front image is way back from our original RFQ. That was the rendering from the RFQ from a year and a half ago. So we realized that things have changed in terms of like the building configuration and things like that. Like in that case, the arcade's still there.
Okay.
So we're gonna talk to a contractor to see if we can get some variation on the fiber cement boards at the installation. But for now, it's just fiber cement boards, and it may be a uniform color, but we may try to do something there where we pre-paint it a slightly different color before we install.
Okay, thanks.
Do you know if I mean, I know some manufacturers of the fiber cement lap siding have like a faux wood where it actually has variation, looks like wood. I mean, do you know if the manufacturer you're looking at provides that option?
There's a couple of manufacturers that do provide that option, and there's different composite boards and things out there. I think as Felix and his team works through the financing and the budgets, we'll have a better understanding of what material can actually be selected, if that can be upgraded. Right now, on all of our renderings and on the material board, you're seeing a fiber cement board because we know that we can actually provide that, and we're confident that we can make that look good. So that's why you're seeing that material. But we'll continue to explore those options.
Also, I mean, I think before, maybe it was in there and I wasn't clear on what the windows were, and now I'm realizing they're all vinyl, and I understand the cost, reasons for that. But I'd like to, I mean, do you guys have any kind of sense of the profile, what the manufacturing profile is for those windows? I mean, it's a pretty sort of you're going for a pretty stately industrial sort of approach, and a lot of the vinyl window manufacturers, the profiles are more kind of classic colonial, or have a lot of shadow lines and things like that aren't really represented here, and probably would look strange if that were the case. And I didn't know if you had a profile in mind.
Yeah, we're finding more and more with the vinyl window manufacturers that you can get different frame options, that they have different lines within their product line, that some are thicker and some are thinner. You'll notice that we're showing those vinyl windows as a color, still trying to keep them looking very contemporary and modern and urban for this context, that we're not showing a white vinyl window in these renderings or in the board. So the intent with showing that dark vinyl is that it's the same quality as a metal window or any other window that you would see out there. And then we'll work on the sizes along with our window manufacturer to make sure that we can provide the sizes that we're showing and break them up accordingly, and that's kind of to be developed.
Yeah, ideally, I mean, as the developer, I would prefer to use the Styline series from Milgard, which is very simple, low profile, and kind of clean lines. That series may or may not be sufficient for the size of windows that we have and the type of configurations we have. But the next lineup is Montecito, and that one also has fairly clean lines. It's a little bit thicker profile.
And these windows open, yes?
Yes.
Where? On the front San Pablo elevation? It's hard to know.
Is it the side panel?
Is it this little, sort of the narrow side panel?
Yeah, exactly.
Long one?
The the middle smaller pieces will be open.
And they would...
The big, not the fixed pane.
They would open, they would not, it's not a system.
It's not a hung
like
window.
A roller.
We're debating about whether that can be built as a slider. That's my preference. And if not, it would have to be casement.
And are those vinyl windows sufficient for sound attenuation?
Yes.
From San Pablo?
Yeah, so we'll do
Carther.
that study as well. We've put in vinyl that's double paned, that's as high as 34 STC. And if we have to go higher than that, we'll go triple pane on vinyl. And the standard that we put in, I think it's about 28 STC.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will go ahead and open the public hearing for this project. If anyone would like to speak on this project, 3706 San Pablo Avenue, please come forward.
Okay, first I'd like to say that the site is within a general plan identified transit hub. And this transit hubs have been determined by the city of Emeryville, by the people of the city of Emeryville, to be one of the salient points of a transit hub. Is there's projects within that, or housing development within that. Those districts are to have less parking. So, market forces being such that they are, who here could guess that our transit hub would be subverted, as we've been shown here tonight, it is being subverted? Who could guess that? And the answer to that question is anybody that pays attention to politics in Emeryville. So that's kind of cynical. Why have a transit hub with the provisions that there be less parking if you're not going to enforce it? Other than the fact that this is Emeryville. Change the subject now. New subject. Maru was talking about the bonus points for this project. As a courtesy to the 7 of you, the 6 of you, should know that the City Council is talking about completely changing the bonus point concept here in Emeryville because it's thoroughly outdated and essentially being manipulated to our detriment, our being the people of Emeryville's detriment, by developers. And so the City Council is talking about completely revamping that. And so you may want to find out about that before you just march blindly ahead with the bonus point concept, because that's being revamped as we speak. The retail component of this project, we heard that they hope to include a bunch of stuff that sounds wonderful. Well, that's what we get with every development here, hope to include. And what we wind up with are mattress stores and formula retail, fast food. I mean, how many times do we have to be fooled before we finally say, well, it's going to be what this developer wants to put there rather than what we want? So I think we should put what we want insofar as the law allows us to do, and so that would mean we need to get this in writing. So it might be that we ask the developer to subsidize the kind of retail that we want, and insofar as the law allows us to do that, why wouldn't we do that? I have more points, but this clock is stopping me. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rod Henme. I'm a resident of Emeryville and also an architect who's, by virtue of perspective, completed about 3,000 units of multifamily housing, most of which are affordable. I want to speak in favor of the project because I think it's highly competently done and provides badly needed affordable housing in Emeryville, and I think I speak in support of the concessions. A few points that I wanted to mention. One is I'm very glad that the arcade from the retail has been eliminated. I think that it's a bad idea to have arcades like that. It makes the retail much more visible from the street and much more viable as arcade. As retail, I would suggest that the signage for the retail seen on the southwest perspective, for example, the blade sign, that is signs perpendicular to the street, not parallel to the street, are the most important in terms of visibility. And so I would suggest the applicant start considering how that corner can really start to make that retail highly visible, because as we all know, retail is very difficult to make viable in these situations. Second point I would make is I hope that you will require that colored vinyl do be used, because I think the white or beige vinyl is going to really hurt the building, and it is an upcharge. So I think it's important that the black or dark colored vinyl be used. And the last point is a suggestion coming at a very late point in the design, I understand. But that is, if the open roof deck were on the southwest corner rather than on the southeast corner, perhaps what I would suggest is that the roof parapet be the same, that it be opened up. You'd need a glass wall in order to provide the windbreak from the west. But that would make this highly visible on the most visible corner, at least coming from the south. It would turn the corner. You'd see it from both the south as well as from San Pablo. It would allow you incredible view of San Francisco as well as to the south. And there's 5 bedrooms in the east corner and 5 bedrooms in the west corner, although there's 3 units in the west corner. So it may be a difficult thing to do, but it could become a real icon or a really strong design statement for the building itself. So thank you.
My name's Darrell Rush. I own the building straight across the street. And I've been to practically every meeting regarding this building and been available for all of them. And up till now, my understanding was it going to be a 55-foot tall building. And I come here tonight and see it's going to be a 73-foot tall building. Was that, and so I mean, I would be opposed to that. 55 feet was just fine. That's other than that, it's great design and I was supportive of it. I talked to the developer once a while back. He called and told him I was supportive of it, but not the 73 feet. So, I mean, the points that you're talking about are pretty abstract, and they should be included anyway, regardless of the building height. Just, they're perfectly rational things to do. Anyway, that's my objection to it, though.
Hi, my name is Betty. I live right in the back of the building that they're going to create. I have talked to the developments a lot about certain things that was going to go on, and we have worked together in the neighborhood, but I do have some concerns about the townhouses that's going straight across, because that's adjacent of my backyard, and how much privacy are they going to be able to look down now, since it's done went up another couple feet, because it did start off at 5 feet. And another concern is I have a sign right there that's on my yard that it's owned by Clear Channel, but it's in my yard. So if they build the townhouses on top, how is that going to interfere there? And my other concern is the writing on the building. What are they going to do about that? And the retail, because on that street that they're talking about, that parking, the street sweeper sweeps at every morning at 3 a.m. So I don't think they can park there anyway, because the street people sweep at 3 a.m. in the morning. So that's all. And where's the garbage going to be at too? Because my house faces all this stuff. I don't want to smell garbage either.
Anyone else who would like to speak on this item? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. What? Oh, sorry. We will not quite close the public hearing yet.
Hi, my name is Nick Nicataris. My dad owns the Bank Club building on 39th and San Pablo. So parking has definitely become a challenge, so more parking is definitely better. For the community, my question is, will the parking still remain on San Pablo for commercial use, the street parking in front of this building on San Pablo? Does anybody have an answer to that question?
Would you like us to respond, Chair Moss?
Sure.
I believe the on-street parking will remain. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was my only question, but definitely more parking is definitely better. So that's it. That's my question.
Any other speakers? Would the applicant like to respond to anything before we close the public hearing?
Hi.
You can click the screen again if you want.
So for, in terms of the retail, sir, we're not underwriting the commercial space. This is a nonprofit development. We're not underwriting it for lending purposes, and we're going to work with the city to choose the tenant of your choice that's really going to benefit the neighborhood. We have that liberty, and I would like to exercise that. We're looking at, nonprofits, or, our first conversation was with Habitat, which is a children's museum, but they wanted some outdoor space and it didn't work for them. But that's kind of the line of thinking that we're going on. In terms of the sky deck location, we chose the southeast corner partly because it was a good design feature for our neighbor to the east. Their home is, if you look at the, let's see. So their home is right here, 10 feet away from our building, and it's a 2-story structure. So at this point, with the reduced height, their sunlight will be a little bit better than had we gone with the 6 stories there. In terms of the height, the top of the building, I believe, is at 65, is that right? 65 feet or so. And that has been that way since before, well, since the last study session, it's been that way. The 73 is the top of the elevator tower, which is a protrusion from the roof. The sky deck is 1 story lower, so that's at somewhere under 60, but that's kind of how this massing ended up, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. The townhouses, let's see, where am I? Sorry. The townhouses are on the ground floor, so they're right here along the facing MacArthur, and so this didn't change since the last time. It's still it's capped off at the top of the townhouse on the left there. That's where the Zen garden is. It's 2 stories up. So if they look out, they will see the roof of the house next door. And then it goes from there. The rest of the units are here, set back another 20 feet. The garbage is on 37th, and it is situated between the 2 vehicular entries, so that's where the garbage is located and where it will be picked up. There's a chute that goes up the 4 stories where people would drop their garbage and recycling. So I think those are the points I want. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we will bring this back for discussion. Commissioner Gunkel, you want to get us started?
Sure. Thank you. So, yeah, I guess some of my questions sort of lead to comments. I do feel like the front rendering with the, I don't know if at that time you were thinking of an Ipe rain screen or something along those lines, but it definitely has a richness that's lost when using the pre-finished cementitious siding. And so I'd like to see something brought back that at least gives that level of character. Again, with the vinyl windows, I mean, it sounds like you're on the right track, but maybe it could be a condition of approval that the vinyl windows, when they're once a decision's made, that they're submitted to the staff for review. Primarily that they are of a design that still feels of, but while being vinyl is of, still feels of quality and doesn't have too many shadow lines where it sort of circumvents the rest of the aesthetic approach of the building. When I look at, there's not really a roof plan, but there is a aerial sort of rendering, and I see in that a lot, like initially I was looking at the elevations and I would see that the different what looked like a mass in one elevation, then I'd look at a courtyard and I'd see that it wasn't carried through. And that made me, realize, looking at the aerial rendering, that a lot of these are just parapets that you're pulling back a little bit to give the impression of a mass or a volume. And I think it's key that if that's the approach and you can't get them to line up from courtyard out to the facades, that they be brought back far enough that there's no risk of what we see all over the place, especially in like strip malls, where they only take it back a few feet and you can see from the street that it's just a fake volume. I'm still seeing in the courtyard, well, a couple things with the courtyard. I mean, starting to see, now that we can see the renderings of the courtyard, it seems like a lot of the attention to detail that was placed in the facade treatment on the four primary facades didn't really carry into the courtyard, and it's really, it becomes pretty, a stark, an obvious stark difference where you can see the small portions at the east and west ends where the materials from the exterior facades are carried in, and then where they meet the rest of the courtyard, which is basically all plaster, and just starts to feel a little bit more kind of office park-like and cold. And we did some field trips to some affordable housing developments, and there were definitely some that we saw where the courtyards were not treated well and felt cold and no one utilized them. And it's really going to be key. I mean, the court, as much as we care about the streets and how this engages the streets and the neighborhood, we also care about how this is going to be, you know, a vital place for the residents of the building. And so, that's not just in the uses and the amenities that are placed in those courtyards, but also how that courtyard's treated. And so I'd really like to see some of the higher quality materials that you're utilizing elsewhere in the building brought into the courtyard, at least in some accents or something along those lines that start to give it a little bit more warmth than it currently seems to have. And the one comment about the sky deck, and I guess what I always saw when I saw the renderings of the San Pablo elevation, and you've got that cut through the building right at the middle with the lights hanging over it, and it feels like this great place where people walking down the street will feel, get a sense of the life that's happening inside the building. I guess I always imagined that would be this sort of hub, the adult hub. I think the last time you sort of presented the primary courtyard as the, family-friendly area with kids, play structures, et cetera, and this would be more adult lounge. But then when I'm actually looking at the landscape plans, I'm seeing a focal element, and then when I look at the photos of what a focal element is, it's like an art piece that's lit up, and then there's a handful of couches and tables and chairs around, whereas the Sky Lounge has your fire pit and your barbecue, your outdoor kitchen, and all those kinds of things. All the things that I guess I was envisioning happening at that adult lounge. And I guess my concern is, as cute as you make the adult lounge look, if there's nothing really to draw anyone to it, it's going to end up becoming a place where people go to talk on the cell phone or work on their laptop, and it's not going to be this sort of introduction of life carried from the courtyard and the building out to the street. So in a lot of ways, I'd love to see that adult lounge become more of what the Sky Lounge or whatever it's called is. And I don't know, I think a lot of times we put a lot of emphasis on roof decks and at the expense of courtyards. And I mean, all these people's houses are facing the courtyard, or a lot of them are facing the courtyards. They're going to see the courtyard all the time. They're rarely going to see the roof deck. And the street doesn't see the roof deck. The street sees the courtyard. The street sees the adult lounge. So like really putting the emphasis on charging those spaces and making those the spaces that people are going to use seems more important to me. And then just making sure the chessboard has pieces, so it's not just a checkerboard painted on the ground. Yeah, I guess, I mean, the one thing that we mentioned last time that I didn't really see any changes to, and I know it's probably difficult to make it work, but that lobby on the first floor is still, the elevator and stairs are still offset, pretty far back from the main lobby, making me think that most people probably won't enter through the lobby, or at least a lot of people would end up just walking down the side street instead and going in that side door. So that corner lobby, I start to wonder kind of what it is. Are the mailboxes in there? I don't know what, it'd be nice to, if you can't make it work with the elevator and the stair coming down at that corner, at least making it work where there's something in that lobby that draws people into that space. That's it.
Well, I agree with your comments about the courtyard, enhancing the facades around the courtyard so that there's a little bit more accent and a little bit more visual interest and warmth to it would be great. Making the adult lounge in the front more usable as a place that people would actually want to go is also important. And one of my one of my issues is always with the infiltration planters, if there's some way to sink them or do something so that they're not these concrete things that are 4 feet high that really just take up space, don't add an amenity. They're too high to be seat walls and sit on. They're too high to really interact with, and they just impinge on the space in the courtyard. So if there's a way to reduce the height of those, that would be great. And again, I just want you to really pay attention to that rear facade of shielding the, the interaction between the existing residents back there and the parking garage, with a really careful treatment of the screens and of the lighting so that that doesn't become a problem, the lighting and the noise, because noise from a garage is also an unpleasant thing to have. That house is 2 stories with windows all along the side, and their setback from the property line's pretty small. You might want to think of something other than those trees that are planted along there. Maybe some clumping bamboo would work better just in that narrow space to give some more of a screening effect, and something that softens that side of the building, because it's a pretty hard exterior on that side. Otherwise, I think that it's quite an attractive building. I think the spaces are thoughtfully put together. And I think that the parking, the going down to 25% of required parking just seems excessive when you're dealing with families that need to get kids around and things like that. So I'm perfectly fine with the 108 parking spaces.
Well, I think that they've met most of the conditions that we asked for. We've studied this many times. I do agree that it would be nice if the interior, the exterior finish in the interior courtyard was a little richer, and also the finish on the outside. And other than that, I think it's very good. I think the entry lobby is primarily for outside visitors, and that the side lobby would be used by people who live there, because the post office box, the mailboxes are right next to that side lobby. Also, that side lobby is next to the garage, and I think that's where most people will be coming from. Other than that, I think it's a great project, and the sort of thing we need here in Emeryville.
Well, I echo the other commissioners' comments and agree with them, especially the courtyard. It was also looking a little severe to me, and the planters, I'm not sure why they're always 4 foot. Do you? Is it to get the volume of water?
Yeah.
It's a bummer. If there's a seat wall, it could be made, or something that, because just not at human scale, and some of the materials and the level of detail on the inner courtyard doesn't quite feel friendly. And I also agree about the leasing office. In general, I love this project. I'm really, really excited about it, and I think you've done a wonderful job. So thank you. And maybe some motorcycle parking. Oh, and also, I thought the one resident architect did have a point. I assume you're using a dark-colored vinyl window. Is that would be, if it would need to be a requirement, like a condition of approval, I would want to have that happen.
Well, I think you guys have done a fantastic job. I still love this project. I think you're really doing a great job answering a lot of needs in a very small space. I'm just absolutely impressed that you can do 9 floor plans in a space like this. And to me, we're looking at 30 units that are 3-bedroom or above. That's 34% of this project. That's more than a third. I think that's family friendly, and I think it's affordable. And with that, I think if you're looking at families in this home, parents are going to need to take their children places. They can't always use buses, although that's what we prefer. So to me, the parking, because of the amount of large family-friendly units that we're putting in this development, I think the parking is justified, and I definitely support the 108 units. I'm just concerned about the unbundling and what that might cause as the street problem, so I think we need to just stay cognizant of that. I guess I see the adult lounge in the courtyard a little different than the rest of my commissioners. As a person without children, I see this maybe as a place to go to get away. I see this as, it does activate the street. It does make it look very festive. To me, this could be where two parents could come and sit while their children are playing in the main family area courtyard, and yet they can sit and have a little bit of quiet and have a conversation of their own. Maybe go have a glass of wine or something. And I like the sky deck where it is. I think that's the place, because as a person who lives in a multi-unit building, when people have parties and things like that where they're barbecuing, I don't know that I want that right under my window if I'm the person that's living there. So having it up on the upper deck where it's away from other people and all these parties and things are happening, I think it's kind of, and it makes the party a little bit more private as well. So I think they've really looked at everything, and for someone who's not going to live in this product, I think it's something that's very attractive. So with that, I think it's just a really good project, and I think with the neighbors' desires for more parking and their concern for losing street parking, I think the 108 is perfectly fine.
Well, I also think this is a fantastic project, yeah, it looks really good, and I want to thank the applicant. I know that we've requested already a couple of big ticket items that you've included, such as the venting the restaurant space all the way up, and including the 10 years worth of transit passes. I know I really appreciate you providing that. I know in projects such as this that is something, as an affordable, as a nonprofit affordable housing developer, that is something that can really impact your project financing. So I really appreciate that you've have included those things. I want to kind of echo past comments regarding the fiber panel. I would really like to see some color variation in that. If there's any way to do that, I think that's really kind of a key material on the front elevation especially, and that it's one that I definitely wouldn't want to see value engineered in such a way that it affected that elevation. So that is one thing I would like to see, and then also I'm also supportive of the doing something to kind of improve the courtyard elevations a little bit. So maybe we can kind of think about how we might fashion some conditions of approval to address those concerns. I think that's most of my comments. I do have one question of staff that I forgot to ask before. I'm really dying to know, actually, on projects like this that are that straddle the border of the two cities, how do we determine which units are in each city for the purposes of tax collection and voting and such? I mean, I see even on these floor plans, there's a unit where the city limits kind of run right through the front door. So I was kind of curious.
Well, I don't know is the honest answer, but clearly if a unit is 100% in one city or the other, then that's the city it's in. I think the general rule is that whatever city the majority of the unit is in is the city it's considered to be in.
Well, wouldn't the street address of the building
well,
on that too?
No, not necessarily. For example, for the units that are all or mostly in Oakland, we are collecting the Oakland Unified School District school fee and sending that on to the city of Oakland. And for the units that are all or mostly in Emeryville, we're collecting the Emory Unified School District fee, and that's the school district that those units are considered to be in. We do have a memorandum of understanding with Oakland on this project that has been approved by their city council and our city manager. And that stipulates things like fire and police services, that Emeryville will provide fire and police services to the entire building, so you don't have to worry when you dial 911, which city's going to show up. But as far as voting and school, I believe it's whatever city all or most of the unit is physically in.
All right, thanks. So with that, would anyone like to make a motion? Does anyone have thoughts on conditions of approval, or?
I had thoughts on that, improving the courtyard elevation. I think that this applicant has shown responsiveness to our request, and I'm not sure, but maybe staff is understanding what we're requesting in terms of a little bit more, what's the word, sort of warmth and friendliness at the level of detail in terms of
the finish is of the...
yeah, and also the filtration planters, making them a little bit more pedestrian scale, or human scale. And I'm wondering if staff feels comfortable in working with the applicant to make those changes so we can move this forward. I just don't know
Yeah,
how
I think
to-
so. I mean, you're talking, if I understand correctly, you're talking about the interior elevations?
Yes.
Facing the courtyard?
Yeah.
Yes.
That look kind of industrial park-like, yes.
So you're looking for different colors and materials?
A greater warmth.
Upgrade overall.
Colors and materials of greater warmth on the interior elevations facing the courtyards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, can we change the filtration planters? I was understanding from them that was a code requirement, is that? So, I
Well, one
mean,
can create a
Does the applicant want to respond to that?
options to make them more.
Are they on the deck? Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
We'll work with the civil engineer and the landscape architect on that. My understanding from them is that the civil has to meet C3 requirements, which requires a certain height for the storm water to go through before it enters a drain.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what they can do, but my first thought was that we can, on the side of the planter, we would step it out for a seat.
Right.
Just to kind of add a little bit of a depth to it, so it's not like a vertical flat face.
just as long as that doesn't impede any kind of walkway or anything, because that would be in addition to what we're showing already,
Yes.
right?
It would eat into the courtyard slightly,
Yeah.
but I think it's on the periphery, so it should be okay. And we can kind of, space some stretches of
Doesn't have to be all the way.
yeah, some flat spaces and maybe some planters that are not stormwater planters, that are
Yeah.
just regular planters in between. So that kind of adds a step to it, if you will.
Yeah, that would be good.
So do we feel that we need to add conditions of approval, or do we feel that the developers?
Well, I think it would be helpful.
Okay.
I've got a couple noted down here. Did you want to say anything about the cement board on the outside?
The variation in the front facade?
Yeah, is there a way to make a condition approval that the fiber cement lap siding have a variation in color similar to that of natural wood?
Yeah.
I think you just said it.
That's almost exactly what I was
Sounds
going
good.
to say. So.
And also that the vinyl windows be reviewed by staff.
And with those conditions, I would make a motion that we approve the project
With the variations that
with
they've
all those
already-
conditions that we just stated.
I'll second.
Is it, I mean, even if we don't put a fire pit or any, I mean, even if, is there a way to bring a little bit more? I just worry about that front entry, that sliver, that adult lounge. If it's all staring at some sculpture and it's just some tables around it. I hear what you're saying, Stephen, but I still think it's not living up to its potential. It looks like such an exciting space from the outside. I'd actually love to see a condition of approval that there be lights strung over it, like in the rendering. But a fire pit or something out there that will actually make it a space that people, you'd be surprised at what people will gather around a fire pit.
And some twinkly lights.
Yeah.
So would you guys have a problem with putting in a fire pit rather than the artwork?
I actually don't think we have a fire pit anywhere in the
development. One in the,
think it's just a
There's the one
barbecue.
called out on a
is
deck.
it barbecue or?
I think it's in the Zen garden.
yeah. Oh yeah, the fire.
It's a Zen fire pit.
Yeah, it's in the. That's right. It's
Maybe
the
we could move it
fire
then.
feature.
a fire feature?
Yes.
Maybe we could.
Okay.
Maybe we,
You weren't aware of that and the liability that it involves?
And it says have a
Battery
fire
operated?
feature in the Zen
Feature.
Garden.
In-
So would you oppose to them moving that to the front adult lounge instead?
I wouldn't
applicant.
oppose to it, but I mean, I was personally opposed to having a fire feature for environmental reasons. But I think, you know, as an activation, as a space activator, I'm open to having a conversation with our landscape architect to try and activate that space. We may come up with an equivalent to a fire pit, if that's okay, but something other than a sculpture.
Yeah, something that is a proven means of bringing people together to a space, and maybe again, condition of approval that the focal element for the adult lounge be reviewed with staff.
I would support that as well, yeah. To add as a condition of approval.
Can you please repeat that?
I got it.
That the focal element at the adult lounge be reviewed with staff, with the intention being that it be a place, something that brings people to that area.
a draw to the space.
A draw to the space.
And I would add that to my motion.
Well, if we're adding these things, I would like to also say, ensure that there's adequate screening on the rear of the building adjacent to the existing residence that faces the sides onto the building.
This is open.
Say that again?
That staff ensure that there's adequate screening between the parking garage and the adjacent residence that has windows looking in that direction.
Okay.
The residence on the east side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And for clarification, you're talking about the overlook, not the lounge, which is in the back, correct? The
Well,
adult.
they call it adult
overlook?
lounge on the landscape drawings. It's
Yeah.
the one that's on
San Pablo.
the
Yeah.
overlook.
San Pablo.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
So my motion would include all of those conditions?
Okay, would you like me to restate what I've got?
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay, I've got, and this is pretty much all design revisions to be reviewed and approved by the director, right? That the vinyl windows be a dark color, that the colors and materials on the interior elevations of the courtyard be of greater warmth, that let's see, that the fiberboard lap siding have variations in color similar to wood. Is that right? Variations in color similar to wood. That the filtration planters in the courtyard be made lower if feasible, and/or seats added to their edges, and/or new planters be added that are not C3 that can be lower. That a focal element be added to the adult lounge and be reviewed by staff, and with the idea being that it's something that draws people to the space, and that there be adequate screening between the parking garage and the adjacent residence where there are windows.
And there's additional motorcycle moped parking.
I didn't hear that one.
I just added it.
It was heard.
It's on my list.
Additional, how much?
Well, there
Twice
isn't
as
any.
much.
Yeah.
There's none now, or is there
There's
two or four?
two, I believe.
There's two. How about 8? Is that too many? That seems,
Well, you might have to lose a parking place to do that.
there's 4 per parking place, correct?
I don't know.
Well, I don't know how the applicant feels about this, but in terms of our code, you can substitute 4 motorcycle spaces for 1 car space. So it counts towards your requirement.
So then we'd have 6. 6 would be, take 1 space.
Okay.
I would add that to my motion.
All right.
I have a clarifying question on the vinyl windows. I want to ask if the color can be on the visible sides of the building, and then in the interior courtyard, can I still use white vinyl where it's not visible?
I thought you were going to ask that question.
I have to protect my budget.
Yeah, no. Personally, I'm okay with that as long as it's kind of consistent with. I mean, we were asking for changes to the elevations, I think as long as it's consistent with the colors and materials that you're still going to have in the
And that the
revised
profile
elevations.
is contemporary, as Commissioner Gunkel was stating.
I don't know, I mean, it's like the courtyard's already needs some work, and then to introduce that in where all of a sudden you're using the white vinyl windows that everyone just sort of inherently associates with kind of cutting corners or being, I don't know.
Well, we're also looking at a nonprofit
I
affordable
know.
housing and trying to make this
I
happen.
mean, I guess maybe the key then is really making it work with whatever you're bringing into the courtyard. So if you're bringing whatever you're trying, material-wise and approach-wise, you're utilizing to bring some warmth to the courtyard, that somehow you're doing that with the windows as well.
Okay.
Is it really that much of a cost difference for the?
It's last time I looked, I think it was a 15% add.
And that's anything other than white?
Yeah.
So why don't we say something to the effect of the interior, the courtyard-facing windows shall be vinyl consistent with the aesthetic of the courtyard elevations. Is that acceptable?
And maybe white, I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And, yeah,
Right? I mean, that's
provided it's consistent.
Yes, got that.
And we'll of course wrap it around the brick veneer, where it's brick.
Okay.
I second.
I think Sean was like,
Oh, that's right. Did we have a second? Gail, you just seconded?
I said.
on my original, Sean seconded, but I've amended it with each of these amendments. I have made the motion, so whether Sean wants to second it.
Whatever, yeah. I don't,
Well,
whatever we need to do.
If the amendments are agreeable to the seconder, then the seconder doesn't change, I think, is how it
That'd be
works.
myself and Sean.
Okay. All right, I think we've got it. Are you ready to vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Cardoza?
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Aye.
Commissioner Gunkel?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Coomerly?
Aye.
Chair Moss?
Aye.
6 ayes, the application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Break, Next
does
one's gonna
anybody-
go a long time.
Break would be good.
Okay, all right, we'll take a
Thank you, guys.
quick 5-minute break and reconvene.